All right, today we're diving into a story that's really about two things: the hard clinical facts of a medical diagnosis and the incredible human resilience that can go way, way beyond it.
So let's just get right to it with this big question. What happens when a child's developmental path is different right from the very start? It's a question that really gets to the heart of both uncertainty and, as you'll see, unbelievable strength.
And that brings us to our first section, an unexpected journey. Because for so many families, this all begins not with clear answers, but with observations and a whole lot of questions.
Early on, doctors and parents might start noticing a range of signs. We're talking about things like a baby having difficulty breathing or feeding, or maybe some unique facial characteristics. Sometimes a baby might not respond to loud noises, or there could be delays in hitting those big milestones we all watch for, like sitting up on their own or starting to crawl.
Now, these are just a few of the potential signs. And when they appear together, they can point toward a very broad category of conditions that doctors call congenital anomalies.
So for our next section, we're going to get into those clinical terms, because to really understand the human side of this story, we have to get a handle on the language first. Knowing what these terms mean helps us understand the challenges.
So what exactly is a congenital anomaly? Well, the medical definition is an abnormal change in growth that happens while a baby is developing in the womb. It's a really broad term. You've probably also heard it called a birth defect, and it can affect, well, pretty much any part of a child's body.
And these anomalies are actually more common than you might think. They can range from conditions like a cleft lip or palate, to issues with how bones grow, to congenital heart conditions, or even chromosomal abnormalities like Down syndrome.
Let's get a little more specific. One condition you'll often hear about in these discussions is hypotonia. This basically means decreased muscle tone. That leads to poor muscle strength, and it's often called floppy baby syndrome because of, well, how it looks and feels.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it turns a clinical term into something you can actually picture. With typical muscle tone, a baby feels firm. They can hold their posture. But with hypotonia, a child might feel kind of limp, have a really tough time supporting their own head, and you'll see those delays in motor skills we talked about.
Another condition that's tied to physical development is rickets. This one is caused by not having enough vitamin D, which leads to abnormal bone development. One of the classic signs you might see from this is a bowing of the legs.
Okay, so we've got the clinical definitions, but how do these diagnoses actually play out in real life? And that brings us to the real heart of our explainer, a warrior of life.
So let's step away from the textbook definitions for a minute and see how these clinical realities completely shaped one family's incredible journey.
The deformities were incompatible with life. Just let that sink in. This was the devastating assessment doctors gave to the mother of a little girl named Heliani during her pregnancy. The scans showed huge challenges, and the prognosis was just dire.
Heliani was facing a whole combination of these congenital anomalies. Her brain, eyes, and nose hadn't formed properly. She had a cleft lip, clubfoot, and fused fingers. The situation was so severe that her mother was advised to terminate the pregnancy.
But her mother chose to continue. And this is where the entire story shifts. It goes from a story of diagnosis to a story of action, and it highlights the incredible, unbelievable power of support.
So, what does a path forward even look like in a situation like this? Well, it is absolutely a team effort. Early diagnosis is just crucial. And from there, you bring in physical therapy to build strength, occupational therapy for daily skills, and speech therapy for communication. You might use assistive devices like braces for support. And right at the center of all of it is unwavering parental support.
And this illustrates a really key point. These aren't just separate interventions you check off a list. They're all threads that weave together to create something so much bigger, an improved quality of life.
Think of it like a circle of care. You've got the medical interventions that address the physical conditions, then you have all the therapeutic support to build skills and strength, and wrapping around all of that is the love and resilience from parents and the community. When all three of those pillars work together, the real focus becomes quality of life, not just the diagnosis.
Which brings us to our final section, redefining what's possible. Because all of this support, all this work, it builds towards something incredibly powerful. It's about more than just managing a condition. It's about completely rewriting the rulebook on what everyone thought was possible.
So remember Heliani, the little girl whose condition was called incompatible with life? Well, despite that diagnosis, she's now a toddler and she's about to celebrate her 3rd birthday.
Her mother now calls her a true warrior of life and a constant reminder to never give up. What an amazing testament to their journey.
Helliani's story really challenges all of us to look beyond the clinical labels and the grim predictions. And it leaves us with this one fundamental question. How do we truly measure a life's potential?